Hi, everyone. My name is Anaïs. I'm a community manager at Webflow, and I'm super excited to have you all here for this webinar. The subject of today is revealing our new feature, the cross-project copy and paste. And I'm here with Kyle Kilat, who is a product manager at Webflow and the product manager on the project. Just to give you a little run-through of how this webinar is going to go. First, I'm going to let Kyle do a little demo of the feature, and he's going to show you how it works, what you can do with it. We're going to go through different use cases so that you guys can see how you can apply it to different cases. And after that, we're going to take your questions live. So you'll have a chance to ask your questions on YouTube. And what we're going to do is you're just going to have to use the little live chat room that's on the right side of your screen. Leave your question in there. And then when the moment comes, I'll announce the live Q&A. And then we'll just take your questions one by one, and Kyle will answer them. At the end of this webinar, we're going to give you information on how you can join the beta version so that you can start playing with it, which is why I know you're all here. But without further ado, I'm going to let Kyle introduce himself and show you how the feature works.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be presenting cross-site copy-paste, the ability to copy and paste elements between projects in Webflow. I guess before I jump into the demo, before we do the Q&A, wanted to take a couple minutes to introduce myself. I'm a product manager here at Webflow and have been here since August of last year, so not that long. But I actually have a bit of a more unique history with the company. Before that, back when the company was first starting, I was actually the second employee here after the co-founders for a short period of time. So was a product manager and designer, knew both Vlad and Bryant, two of the co-founders, for years, worked with them for years before they started Webflow, and had the opportunity to be a part of the early journey as a product manager, designer, marketer, customer support, hybrid role back then, working mostly on what eventually became the Webflow CMS before leaving to start my own company and kind of have that part of my journey for the last few years before having an opportunity to come back. So we, for those years where I was running my own company, were Webflow users of pretty much every part of the product, for our marketing site, our help documentation site, even our product prototyping. So I got to be a customer for many years, and then now I get to be back as a product manager and building features that I had wanted for a long time, like the ability to copy and paste between projects. So without further ado, maybe I'll jump right into showing some of that off for us. Oh, great. So let me share my screen real quick. Okay, is that coming through all right? Yes. Okay, great. So let's say that I'm a freelance designer and I'm just about to start a site for a new client called Cross-Eyed Pastries and Desserts. And, you know, literally just starting this thing, I have a little bit of a hero in place and an idea of just kind of generally what I want to do here. But before I started, I'm actually thinking, heck, I made this other site for a different client, Command-C Coffee, a little while back. And there are a couple of things that I spent a lot of time kind of tweaking and tuning that I'd love to not have to do all of that work again for this new site. So, you know, the nav bar that becomes sticky as you scroll down the page, this really kind of cool, sticky, horizontal scrolling section in the middle that I, by the way, totally stole from our awesome Webflow designer, Ryan, here for the purposes of this demo. But, you know, there are a couple of things like that from a project that is completely unrelated that I'd actually like to reuse as a starting point for this new project rather than building it all from scratch. Because right now, as you know, there are only two options. Rebuild everything from scratch every single time, or you have to duplicate the entire project and then strip away painfully everything that you don't need just to get those few components that you do want to keep. So with cross-site copy-paste, it's a very different story. So let's say I wanted to take a button like this for my new site. I'll start with a pretty simple example. But even this button is a little more complex, right? It has hover effects, it has an interaction, it has an image asset inside of it, all of those things. And didn't take that long to build, but still, rather than building it all from scratch, I'd love to just select it, Command C or Control C, come to the new project, Command V, and there you go. It's in the project, not only the button and the assets and the styles and effects, but the interactions came over as well. So, now that it's in this new project, obviously it's not quite the same look and feel that I would like. So I'm just gonna do a couple of tweaks here and get it looking a little bit more like I would like in this one. So red's not quite the right color for us. And quick hover effect here. And we're going to call this Start Your Order in my new site, because it's going to be an e-commerce site, which I'm also very excited about. Now, as you'll see, I have the component that I pulled over from Command C Coffee, completely different project, into this new one. Just took about a minute to change the styling for this new site, and we're ready to go. So pretty fun stuff to be able to do, but I know that was really like just a button, right? So maybe I saved myself 5 or 10 minutes worth of work, but still could have created that button pretty simply in this new site as well. But how about something maybe a little more complex, right? Like a nav bar. Nav bars are one of those components that a lot of times end up being pretty similar between the different sites that you're building, but you have to build them every single time. And even then, if you want to do some even slightly slick stuff, like have drop-down menus inside of your nav bar on desktop, so you hover over these and they're drop-down menus rather than just regular links, but then you want a completely different type of menu where it's all broken out on mobile. And on top of that, you want the ability to have your nav bar look differently in the hero when you're scrolled up to the top, but a sticky version of it scroll down and kind of be fixed at the top of your site as they're scrolling down. I know a lot of these probably sound familiar to folks because I see it built over and over again so many times. That stuff takes a while to kind of get perfectly right. So it would be really nice to be able to just select it, Command C, come over to your new site, Command V, and everything gets pasted into the new site as well. And you get the nice interactions there, the scrolling interactions in there, all of the styling, all of the responsive behavior, and it's all just good to go for you. And all you have to do at that point is really just, again, tweak the styles to match your new site rather than the old one. So I'll just take a quick second to make some of those changes here. So this thing looks a little bit nicer than being just dropped in. But as you can see now, all of a sudden we have a nav bar that actually looks pretty nice. Well, I'm not a designer, so I probably shouldn't say it looks really nice, but better than it did before, at least in our new site. And it's all working. Obviously, I would also go and kind of restyle the background up here, change the logo, but you don't need to see me do a bunch of things that you already know how to do, rather than kind of showing off the cross-site copy-paste functionality. So that was cool. Now, with that first example, like I said, probably saved 5 to 10 minutes. The nav bar, realistically, I probably saved myself about an hour of work. I think sorry for my voice. I think you're starting to get the point of how this feature works and some of the power of what it can bring. But maybe I'll just give one more example and show how I'm going to save myself hours and hours of work rather than having to rebuild something much more complex like this sticky side-scrolling scroll interaction triggered section in the middle here between sites, which took me a lot longer to put together. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, I stole it. So I even had another site where it was already built to look at while I was creating this thing, and it still took me hours with an HTML embed that has some special CSS magic in there, the scrolling triggers and interactions, like I said, complex layout styling in there. Well, still cross-site, copy it, come over to the new site, paste it, and as hopefully you had expected by this point, everything gets pasted in just as you would have imagined. So works on desktop, works how I have it styled on mobile, and now at this point, all I'd really have to do is kind of make the changes that I want to do for this new site for that component down there. So that was I think 3 relatively quick examples that I wanted to share of how you could use this new feature, the ability to copy and paste between projects, to drastically increase the speed of your workflow when building new sites with Webflow, as you can not have to reinvent the wheel every single time for really common things that you build over and over and over again. You can just take that work and start from there in your new projects, hopefully turning what often ends up being hours, even days of work, into kind of minutes to get yourself set up and started with a new project better. So that, as you can imagine, with styling and interactions and images, and then you start to think about other complicated aspects like fonts and different pieces. There are a lot of complex use cases and edge cases with this functionality, but maybe what I'll do now is just kind of let us go to more of a Q&A driven and see what's top of mind for all of you, and start from there. And hopefully I'll be able to show a couple of more cool tricks that are built into this one for us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kyle. This is super exciting. And I know from reading you guys in the live chat that you're also super excited. I'm excited. I know that this has been an item that was on the wish list for a really, really long time. Yes. I just want to tell you guys that we're really committed to following up on all of those ideas, all of your feedback. Sometimes, things like this that just look so easy to demo take a really long time to make. But yeah, in the future, we're definitely going to try to keep you guys more, keep you guys in touch with what's happening in the company, what's happening product-wise. I think it's also super important for you to be able to know what you're going to be able to use in your projects. And kind of plan with that. So just want to say thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long time standing, #1 in the wish list for a really, really long time. So yeah, thank you guys for hanging in there, and super excited that we're going to be able to bring this to you super soon. I also want to thank all of you who left questions in the registration form that we sent. This is super useful because we were able to see kind of what you guys had on your mind. We were able to better understand what are the questions that are recurring, what most of you are wondering about. And so what we did is that we selected a couple of questions that were based on what most of you were asking about cross-site copy-paste. And I hope that Kyle is going to be able to show us how some of those work.
Yeah, definitely.
So without further ado, we're going to continue with some of the questions that you guys have left. And the first question that I picked was about classes. And the question is, how will classes be translated, particularly in the case of duplicate class names? Kyle, can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me hop over and share my screen again, because I think it'll be even better if I show it than just talk about it. But yeah, as you can imagine, classes, you saw some of this already work in action in this case, right? Where I was copying things over and they showed up with all the styles as you would have expected. But this was a pretty easy example because there was almost nothing in this new project. So once you get into conflicts, then you start to have some very different types of behaviors there. And one thing that we really try to do overall when it comes to things like classes, like interactions, these reusable elements of reusable components for designing your sites, we wanted to make sure that we were doing our best job to bring as much of the properties that you're pasting over into the new site, but also not destroying things that you had already built and changed in the destination site that you're pasting into. So maybe I'll just show a couple of examples and what happens both when you're pasting things in for the first time when there are potential conflicts that exist in the existing site that you're pasting into, and then also some of the intelligent stuff that we've done for remembering when you've already pasted in styles from one project to another and trying to intelligently make and maintain those connections between them as well. So if I have one example here where it's this button with a class called unique button, and that class does not exist in my destination project. As you can imagine, copying and pasting that in here, it just ends up with a unique button class, and it has all the styles that came from the source project. So pretty straightforward there, I'd say. What though if you had a button with a class called same in your source project, and you also had another class in your destination project, completely unrelated, but with the exact same name, that also ended up having the exact same styles? Well, if you pasted this one in here into the new site, what you'll see is we didn't create another class. What we intelligently did there was notice that the names were exactly the same, and then went in and checked the styles to see if all of the properties on the class in the source site were the same as the properties in the destination site. And since they were, we said, rather than create a brand new, completely duplicate class, let's connect these two because they're exactly the same. So if you made changes to either of these, it's going to affect both now, rather than ending up in a situation where you might think you have a bunch of things with the same class, but they're all different. So that's one of the things we do when it's the same name, is we check and see if the styles are the same. But what if they're different? So this button's class is same, but different. It has a purple background in my source, but I happen to have a class with the exact same name in the site I'm about to paste into that has blue as the background. In this case, we notice that even though the names are the same, the styles are different, and then create a duplicate class in the new project for the class that we're pasting over to maintain both the styles that you already have in the destination site, but then also the styles that you're trying to paste into from the other site, and give you a little notification here that we renamed it during the paste. But as you'll see, we have same but different is unchanged in the destination site, and the new class is pasted in as kind of a duplicate class with a different name. So that kind of shows how we deal with naming conflicts, which, and I'll kind of breeze through this part, is pretty similar to how we deal with things when you're kind of pasting the same style in over and over again between projects. So if you have a button that you paste in from that site with a class called nothing changed, and you haven't even changed anything, and you paste it in from that site again, we're going to detect that it's the same and kind of merge and link those classes rather than create a brand new class in that case. But if you've already pasted an element with a particular class from your source site to your destination site, and then you went back to the original and you changed the styles of those to say red instead of orange and paste it again, we would detect that change and kind of create a new duplicate class with that change, so that again, we're not overriding or potentially kind of plowing over changes that you've made on either the source or destination site since you did that original paste. So I know it gets pretty complicated as you start to think through all of these different use cases, but hopefully those are a few examples that show some of what we're trying to do intelligently to, to maintain so much of that power and functionality of reusing classes as you're pasting content between different projects. So there's those. There are some other, maybe I'll just kind of run through a couple of other quick class related examples that are kind of interesting. This is gives a demo of how we deal with inheritance. So, I have an H6 in here that is actually inheriting its styles from both the container. So this one is inheriting its green font setting from the container that it's inside, but then also is inheriting the font family, for instance, from the global H6 headings tag for the source site here. Now, one thing that we do, and you'll see that there really aren't any special styles applied to this specific class for this element in this site. It's inheriting everything. What we do with inheritance when you're pasting across sites is we actually don't try to carry over all of the styles that element was inheriting from other places, so that the styles that you've already set in your destination site that you would like to cascade down get applied correctly in the new context. So in this case, in the destination site, we have the container element had purple as the color that it wants the text to be, and our all H6 headings was set to have Montserrat and be all uppercase rather than what it looked like in the destination site. And basically, when you paste in an element, as long as it doesn't have specifically overriding styles on the classes for that element itself, it will now get the inheritance correctly from the new site rather than trying to pull all of that over from the old one. So hopefully that provides some kind of good examples on what we're doing with classes and styling with some of those more complex cases there. So.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Kyle. That was a pretty good answer.
No problem.
It's super awesome to see how you guys have worked through all of that complexity and all of the possible examples of that application that you could think of. Really, really impressive. Just for you guys who may not have been here since the beginning, we're almost halfway through this stream. We're going to continue with some of the questions that you guys have left before. There's a couple of other things that we really want to show you, and then we'll take some time at the end for a live Q&A and give you some more information about how you can join the beta version. So let's continue with the questions. The next question that I have, Kyle, is about interactions. This is something that a lot of people have been asking about, understandably so. And maybe a question that I have for you would be, first of all, if we're going to be able to copy and paste interactions as well, and if there is going to be saved reusable blocks.
Great. So hopefully some of the people who had that question before already got at least a bit of their answer from the demo I did earlier, where every single one of those components I copied and pasted in that demo had an interaction. And all of those got pasted in correctly as we go. I won't demo some of the more complex cases around interactions right now, because that's one area where we're actually still developing some of the behavior there. As I'm sure a lot of you know, recently, I think it was even just last week, we released a bunch of awesome improvements to our interactions, like class-based triggers, the ability to target classes versus individual elements with action items, or the trigger element with the action items. All amazing, amazing new functionality that greatly improves the ability to create reusable interactions. But for cross-site copy paste, we've had to add in a little bit more work now to also make it work for all of those cases as well. And so we're currently developing that right now and trying to wrap up that work so that when we ship this functionality, it works perfectly with all of the best new stuff that we've released with interactions. But I can say that that overall the idea is to approach interactions with a similar mindset as we did with classes, where we want to reuse as much as possible and kind of maintain as much of those links as we possibly can as you're pasting between sites. So doing some intelligent things around actually going into the interactions as you're pasting them and seeing if this one is exactly the same as an animation that's already in that site. If so, we're not going to create new ones, so you end up with 15 animations that are exactly the same just because you've kind of been copy and pasting between projects. We're going to be able to combine those intelligently as long as all of the settings are exactly the same, like I showed with classes. But then also create new ones if we detect that what you are trying to paste in is actually different, even if the name is the same as what you have in the destination site. So that's essentially the plan for interactions. As you saw already, in a lot of cases, it's already working. But in some of the newer cases that were introduced more recently, like class-based triggers and kind of class targeting, those ones aren't working just yet. And so we're building out that functionality right now so that we can have it available once we ship this.
Awesome, gotcha. Can you tell us a little bit more about symbols?
Yes, and that one I actually can show. So I'll hop back over to my my messy testing and demo site here, but symbols. So basically, yes, you can copy and paste symbols between projects, but what we do in this case is we actually break them apart from that symbol in the first project and paste that same content, same styles and everything as standard elements and classes in the new project. So we let you know that, hey, we had to unlink that symbol. So it's now kind of completely separate from the symbol that was in the original project. But you now have still all of the content working and styles and interactions and anything that you had in there working as expected in the new project. And if you wanted to make it a symbol here, you would just then create a new symbol in this new project to have that same functionality here. So we don't stop you from copying and pasting between the two, but we do kind of break that link as we take that action and allow you to kind of work from there however you would like in the new project.
Nice. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I guess the next question, something that we really should address, because this is something that a lot of you guys had on your mind, is the question of CMS collections. So that's quite a complicated one. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more, and I'm sure we won't have time to go through everything, but it would be cool to hear, what happens if we try and copy paste CMS collections. Maybe talk us through some of the limitations as well, and if there are any workaround. Yeah, no, that'd be great. And I actually do have a pretty quick demo of how that works with collections as well. So with CMS collections, as I know all of you are aware, are different because they're actually connected to data, CMS data on the project. And what we do with CMS content when copying and pasting between projects
is we aren't going to carry over any of that data between one and the other. So if you were to copy and paste a collection list, or any set of elements that contains a collection list, you're not going to get an error. But essentially what we're going to do is paste that collection list into the new project as an unbound collection list. So if you have CMS items in the new project, you could then link this collection list in that project to the data that you have here. So we do paste it, but we don't bring any of that data over. One kind of cool thing that we do with this though is, if you were to say you didn't copy and paste an entire collection list, but rather just some content within a collection list item, so all of this is still dynamic in this site, we'll actually let you paste that across projects. And what we do is keep all of the elements and the styles, but we just convert that dynamic content, those, the content that was bound to those CMS fields, to just default values. So they're just kind of a normal image with a placeholder image and text, or header elements and text elements as it comes over into the new project, which does kind of create some pretty cool workarounds for, even though we aren't going to bring all of the collection data and data structures and everything from one project to the next. What you can do with this is, essentially copy and paste components within dynamic collection lists into new projects to help speed up your workflow if you've built some really, really cool cards or, different types of components within your CMS items. So.
Nice. Thanks, Kyle.
Great, no problem.
Cool. So I think there's only one more thing that I really want to go through before we jump into the live Q&A, and we'll actually have quite some time for you guys because it's only 6:30. So that's good, 6:30 for me, and 10:30 for some of you who are in Pacific time. So maybe the last thing that I really wanted to talk about is, if there's going to be an ability to use a Webflow UI kit or sort of UI kit to create new sites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's let me hop over to my other screen just to kind of show rather than just talk. But cross-site copy paste, this functionality also opens up some other types of workflows that you could add into your design workflows as well, and help speed things up. In terms of thinking about, what if you were to create some projects that served as more UI kits or component libraries that you could then pick and pull pieces from those projects into every other project that you're creating, rather than having to rebuild them over and over and over again. And there are a couple of ways that you'll be able to kind of make this type of workflow work with this new functionality in some pretty powerful ways. One that I'll show that's kind of cool is if you were to have, say, a project like a starter site here that had essentially every kind of base tag that you have. So an H1, an H2, an H3, a paragraph, kind of a button, links, anything that you can style with one of those all links options. One thing that you could do when you start new projects with the ability to copy and paste between them is have a collection of those in one project somewhere else. Maybe when you're starting a new project, you create a page called styles, hop in there and you paste that in. And here, now you have kind of all of those elements in here already, and you could quickly style what you want all H1s to look like in this brand new project, what you want all text links to look like in this brand new project. And really, this is, I guess, less of a kind of pulling things from a UI kit, but rather how you can quickly create style starters in new projects that you're working on. The other way that you could use this is if you actually had a project that did serve as something like more like a component library or UI kit, where you had some of these things pre-built, pre-styled, with interactions applied and everything that you wanted there. And you could then just find those different elements when you want to use them on new projects, copy them, and paste them over into your new sites as you're working on them. This one, as I showed earlier, is inheriting the text links styles in the new project for all links. So if you didn't want it to be blue, for instance, you could go ahead and change that color to something else. And now in the new project, you have that component there, and you could create form components, tab components, as I showed earlier, navbar components, common footers that you use, common pricing page templates, really, anything that you could imagine potentially reusing in a lot of different projects. You'd be able to do that much easier with this new functionality than before, where you would have had to build it all over and over again, or duplicate every single project with everything, and kind of only strip away the pieces that you don't want.
Awesome. This is super exciting. I think it's really cool to see, if you start thinking about it, what kind of like new possibilities this new feature also opens, like just, outside of just simply copy pasting, for example, a class or a symbol, but really like thinking forward, like that also opens up a lot of possibilities. And
oh, yeah.
I actually, there were a couple of questions in the questions that you guys left that I thought would be really interesting to have as follow-up questions. And if that's all right with you, Kyle, I would like to read the questions, and then maybe you can tell us a little more about whether or not you've been thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So the first question that I was thinking about was this one. So, have you thought about creating a global library where you can store frequently used elements that can be accessed from within any project? That would be awesome. Yes. Mm-hmm. And the second question, which is also sort of related, was I'd love to hear about how cross-site copy and paste could potentially lead to a Webflow community marketplace, where users like myself can buy and sell templates/UI kits created from our pre-existing Webflow sites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are both really, really interesting questions, and definitely related to what I just showed there. For the first one, kind of a global library that you could use for components that you're pulling into different projects. I think the demo I just showed shows one way that you'll actually be able to bring that workflow to life as soon as we launch this feature. Where, hey, you can create a project to serve as that on your account, and then just copy and paste things into new projects from there as you need. The one piece that I'd say is kind of missing with that setup is, well, what if you wanted to make a change in that master global library and you wanted that to instantly like apply to all of the different projects? That is something that isn't, solved by or a piece of this cross-site copy-paste functionality, but it is something that we have on our minds as we think about really the future of symbols and reusable components. And we are at least in the early stages of thinking and researching and prototyping and experimenting with some really cool things, improvements we can make to symbols to make them more flexible, and even hopefully more reusable, not only within sites, but throughout different projects as well. So I would say nothing that is, is already kind of in flight and ready to be delivered now, but something that is certainly on our mind as a powerful tool that we would love to be able to provide to folks.
Definitely. Nothing is impossible. It's just a matter of time. Cool. So I hope your voice is okay, Kyle. I really wish that I could pass this bottle of water through the screen to you. But don't worry, we don't have that much longer to go. What's actually cool is that now we're going to be able to open the floor for questions from you guys. And I have a couple of questions already that are saved. So it's currently 22, which means that we'll probably have 15 minutes for questions. If we don't have any more questions, then we can let you go early, which is also exciting. And I'm just going to start now, and I'm going to read the questions one by one. And Kyle, I'll let you handle the answer since you've done so well so far, and I hope that your voice can handle it as well. That we're not going to leave you completely mute after this webinar. So the first question that I have is from Piotr. And by the way, guys, you have to excuse me if I butcher your names. I promise I will do my best, but there may be a couple of mistakes, so please don't be mad. So first question from Piotr. Hey, are you planning to expand this into account-wide symbols?
Account-wide symbols. So I think, if I'm understanding correctly, I think that question was what we actually just talked about. In terms of like a global component library and having symbols that could be used in different places. So my short answer to that question would be that I wouldn't necessarily consider that an extension of this feature, being able to copy and paste between projects, but a potential extension to our symbols functionality that as I said is something that we're certainly thinking about and exploring and trying to see what that would look like if we brought it to life.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. The second question that we have is from Tullio. And Tullio is asking, do custom data attributes copy over, like element settings, custom ID, that kind of things?
Yes. So most settings do copy over from when you're copying and pasting between sites. There are, and I'm sorry, it's hard to keep all of the details in my head. There are a couple of exceptions to that. For example, if you are copying and pasting a link that links to a page in the source project, when you paste that into the new project where that page doesn't exist, that link is going to get stripped out. And so there are some of those cases around linking to things that only exist in the project where you're copying and pasting from. I think linking to a section would be another example like that. Maps, I know, are another case where there's a Google API key involved, and we don't quite carry all of that over. But as far as most of the other settings, things in that settings panel like custom attributes, IDs, those types of things, all of that should paste over just fine.
Cool, awesome. Before we continue with the questions, I just wanted to let you know that you have a huge hug from Stu and from everyone. People are going pretty crazy in the live chat right now, and I know that you're not looking, so that you can stay focused on the demo and the questions. But yeah, I just wanted to send you that hug.
I'm glad everyone is really excited. You know, this is for it to like really be my first main feature to be able to help launch since coming back to Webflow. It's like, oh, it's the top one on the wish list, and it has been for forever. And it's and I know everyone wants it. I've wanted it for years myself, and so I'm very, very excited to be able to have this so close to getting in all of your hands. So
yeah, definitely. Cool. The next question is from Ryan James. Ryan, thank you for your question. And Ryan asked, do you have to copy out of your own Webflow projects, or can you copy out of other people's projects?
Yes. So you do have to copy out of your own Webflow projects. Basically, the way that we kind of control permissions on this is you need to be in a project where you have write access, where you actually have the ability to edit and make changes in that project, which means that you own it or are a part of an organization that owns that project, to be able to copy elements from it and paste it into a new project that you're working on. So things like preview links to kind of sharing preview links to people where they can open up your site in a read-only mode in the designer. They won't be able to copy and paste from those. So it's kind of limited to only sites where you have ownership right now. So the one area where we might loosen that restriction is if you're looking at in read-only mode for sites that are already clonable. We might make it possible to copy and paste directly from those. But for now, what you would do to get anything from a site that's clonable is clone that project so you have a version of it in your own account, open it up, and then copy and paste from there. So it's still possible to use this workflow with clonable sites. It's just one extra step right now that we might remove. So.
Absolutely. Cool. So I think I just have a couple more questions for you, Kyle. The first one is from Jeremy, Jeremy Sandlin, and Jeremy is asking, does renaming the class affect interactions bound to those classes? Interesting.
So my short answer to that question is that we're building the kind of class-based interaction triggers stuff right now. So the plan is that, yes, essentially what we're trying to do is when you paste in elements that contain both classes and interactions and potentially have conflicts with both or either of those, is what we're going to do is resolve any merge decisions or kind of duplicate class creation for the classes first that are involved. So, hey, is this the same as a class that's already in here, and should we just combine them, or do we need to paste this in as a new class? Do we need to paste it in as a new class with that's being renamed? That type of thing is resolve that, and then make sure that we're carrying over the results of that resolution to any interaction bindings that are also being pasted over that we're targeting that class. So I don't know. Sorry, I don't know how clear of an explanation that was, but the idea is that, hey, we want to maintain all of the connections between classes and interactions as we're pasting over those complex components from one site into another. And then, while doing that, we're also doing our best on both sides to try to match and reuse with existing things in the destination site as well, so that you end up in a state where you have as much reusability as possible, which further makes your work on those projects easier and faster. Yeah.
Very good short answer. It was understandable. Cool. So we actually got a few questions about templates, and I really want to address this because I know that, for example, some of you might be wondering how this affects template sellers. So yeah, I just wanted to ask Kyle if you had kind of thought about this, and if you could tell us a little bit more about templates.
Yeah, so with paid templates, things are always a little bit more complicated because when users purchase a paid template, they're agreeing to a license and specific usage of that. So right now, if you were to buy a paid template, if you wanted to create another site and use that same template, you can only do that if it's for the same clients. So we don't, we don't stop you from creating a new site with that template, but it is important for those users to understand that, hey, if they're using it for a different project, they need to purchase another template license. Cross-site copy paste makes things a lot more difficult or gray areas to kind of draw hard lines, because you can copy and paste a single text block or a button, or once you've created a project based on a paid template, you can add and make whatever changes you want to that, and copy and paste, and want to copy and paste even the smallest amount of those from those projects. And so as of right now, we don't have any restrictions on being able to select and copy elements from a project you own even if it was started with a paid template, to a new project that you also own. That said, I know that that could be used and abused in some ways by people. And so what we're doing there is basically trying to track when those things are happening, when copying and pasting is happening between projects and from projects that started with paid templates, to try to do our best to identify whether or not it is being a problem. And if it does become a problem, then that's something that we can work on solving as it comes up. So that's one of the tougher questions or things to try to balance, where locking it down too much means we're basically stopping people from being able to use this in certain cases, even if it would have been totally fine and within the the permissions of the license that they agreed to. So
yeah, that totally makes sense. Thanks for clarifying that.
No problem.
I'm going to ask you one last question from the live Q&A, because after that, I would really like it if we could get to, talking about the beta version. And I have maybe one or two more questions prepared for you. Okay. So the last question from the chat. Oh, the last question from the chat was actually removed. Never mind. So I guess this is it. What I would like to do now is I would really like for you to tell us how we can get access to the beta version.
Yeah, so the really exciting answer for that is that by virtue of having registered and participating in this webinar, we have the list of people that we're going to give access to the beta as soon as it's ready. So we want to, as I was kind of explaining, finish up some of the newer, more complicated interactions related behaviors that we're working on. But once all of that is ready to go, as you saw, a lot of this feature is very much ready to be used. And we want to get that in all of your hands as quickly as possible before we release it to everyone, so that you can help us further test it out, provide feedback, help us identify bugs if there are any out there. Hopefully we're catching as many of them as we can beforehand, but really get your help and your feedback on understanding if we're hitting the mark with this, so that we can make sure it's absolutely perfect and as good as possible before opening it up for everybody. So thank you. I would say just we'll reach out to everyone via email who participated in this to get you access when we're ready to turn that on. So.
Exactly. Yeah, and I can just add I can add to that I'm going to send all of you guys a follow-up email with the information, everything that we talked about in the webinar. And you'll also have all of that information in written. So don't worry, we have your contact. We know how to contact you. And yeah, you guys will definitely be on our list, and we'll let you know as soon as it's ready. You'll be the first people to know. Maybe to finish this webinar, what I would really like to do, Kyle, is I think it's a good opportunity for you to tell us a little bit more about the product roadmap at Webflow and where we're going, what you guys have in mind. I know that there was also a lot of questions about that in the registration form. So even though that's not directly related to cross-site copy pasting, I think we should really take this occasion to give you guys a little heads up on what's coming at Webflow.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great. And one of the ones that I imagine, so I think the invitation for this went out before. I'm so sorry. Before we launched our e-commerce announcement page on Monday. So for anyone who didn't catch that announcement, if you go to webflow.com/e-commerce, we did announce that is one of the huge things that's coming to the platform in the near future. And we're working really, really hard on bringing all of that functionality to life as well. We'll, again, be opening it up to smaller groups of people in beta as we get further along with that. But know that's another one of those really, really highly wished for features on the wish list for many years, and is something that we're also very excited to be announcing that we've been working on for a while now and are bringing to life there. So that one would be the big one. And I think I probably already kind of spilled the beans a little bit on some of the other stuff we're working on with talking about the symbols enhancements and components, where we're doing some really really exciting, trust me, prototyping and experimenting around different ways that we can enhance that functionality to make it more reusable, more powerful, not only within projects, but then potentially between projects as well, which will open up a lot more awesome use cases for people. So I'd say those are a couple of the biggest ones, though. You know, we're working on a ton of features along the way as well. So we'll have more to come on all of that.
Super exciting. Thanks so much for doing this with me, Kyle. I know that your voice must have suffered a little bit, so thank you so much for hanging in there and making sure that we have all of that information. I really hope that you guys enjoyed watching this webinar. As I said earlier, I'm going to send you a recap email, so you have all of that information in the follow-up email. You do not need to worry about, you know, where to find links or anything like this. And I just wanted to say that this is kind of the first time that we do this this sort of webinar when we have a new feature coming out, you know, just to give you guys like a quick run through of how it works, what you can do with it, take your questions live. So if you liked this format, please do let me know. And as I said at the beginning of the webinar, we're also thinking about new ways that we can make sure we keep you guys updated about what's happening on the product side. And do a super good job at keeping you updated, for example, on what's happening with your wishlist items. So yeah, if you have any kind of feedback, if you liked it, just let me know. And yeah, we'll see if we can do more in the future. It was super, super nice to have you, Kyle. I had a really good time.
Yeah,
I hope that everyone did as well.
So if people did like it, I would love to do more of these in the future as well. So. And hopefully I can promise that my voice will be better, but very much enjoyed it. Happy to be bringing this this functionality to everyone, and yeah, would love to do it again. So thank you.
Awesome. Then I'm gonna say goodbye to all of you guys. For those of you who are in Europe like me, I'm gonna say good night, and for those of you who are in the States, have an awesome day filled with very productive things, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, one more big hug for everyone.
Big hug.
So, thank you.
I don't know how to do a hug virtually, but yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.